So if your low back is feeling very tight, a little bit painful maybe, hopefully some of these moves will help you. They don't have to be done in any particular order, so you can just work through the sequence, work out which ones feel like they give you a little bit of relief, and then maybe start incorporating those movements into your day-to-day routine. I'm going to be using a block for this practice, but if you don't have a block, you could use a small cushion or a rolled up blanket, or even one of those little Pilates balls. I'm just going to use this to kind of squeeze between our thighs for some of the exercises, which helps to turn the adductors on. So it kind of helps to keep our hips in alignment and helps us to use some of the muscles that maybe are being underused, which can sometimes contribute to low back pain. So we'll come down onto our backs. And if you do have a lot of back pain, then this even might be a little bit much for you. So you might want to pop a blanket underneath your hips at this point to give them a bit of extra support. So coming down onto your back, and just pause for a moment, maybe with the feet wide, the knees dropping in, and just kind of assess how is your back feeling and where is the stiffness and the pain. Especially if you've been living with back pain for a while, we can become almost a little bit sort of misattuned to it. We're just so familiar with it. We might not notice maybe that it perhaps is sitting more on one side than the other, or perhaps is radiating down a hip or something. So just check in and really notice, where is the pain or where is the stiffness? Now, obviously, if you've got a serious back issue, rather than doing these exercises on YouTube, you should absolutely contact your GP, a medical professional, or a physiotherapist. So this is more for people who know they've got a back issue, and this is for recovery, or if you're just experiencing stiffness and pain in the area. Let's just bring the feet back, hip width apart, and I'm going to bring my block in between my thighs and just squeeze them together. And to begin with, I'm just going to bring my knees a little bit closer to my chest, so my feet are off the ground, and I'm going to bring my hands onto my knees. I'm going to gently start guiding the knees in a little kind of half circle. So I'm guiding them around like I'm drawing a circle with my knees. And as I go over to the left, my right hip is lifting up. Guiding them to the right, my left hip is lifting up. Squeezing the block gently, wherever prop you're using. And they don't have to be big circles. This will give you a bit of a core workout as well, as a little side bonus. It's really worth remembering everything in the body is connected. So if you're having low back pain, it may be that you need to work on your core. It may be that you need to think about your mid-back or your hamstrings or your hip flexors. If you'd like, you can just continue what we're doing. If you'd like, you can bring your arms out to the sides and start just doing this with your knees. And you might find that you can start making the circles a little bit bigger. Notice your breathing. Make sure you're not holding your breath. Just take one more to each side. And then bring your feet down. Just give yourself a little rest for a moment. Maybe adjust your props. And then we're going to bring the knees back in. This time, hands on the knees. We're going to do some pelvic tilts. So we're going to gently curl the base of the pelvis up, and you'll feel your low back flatten against the mat. And then pushing the knees away from you, you're gently curving the pelvis under, and you'll feel the low back start to lift off. So let's just explore that motion for a little while. You're doing quite a bit of this work with my arms so that my hips are actually not too involved. I want to try and keep my hips, my low back as relaxed as possible here so that I can really sort of move through the fascia, through all the tiny little muscles that can carry a lot of stiffness. you're enjoying this motion, you can just continue like this. If you would like to take it a wee bit further, no pressure to do this, by the way. Interlink your hands behind your head, just cradling the base of the skull with your hands. And as you move the knees away, stay as you are. And as you bring the knees in, just start to lift your chin up, sort of squeezing the knees and your head towards one another. It's not a sit-up. This is about the back and the pelvis, and keep the focus on that. Let's just do a couple more. And then release. Take the block or your prop out. Wiggle your feet to the edges of the mat. Maybe bring the arms out in a T and just drop the knees from side to side, allowing the hips to lift up in a gentle twist. If you feel any popping or shifting, so long as it's not painful, that's quite a good thing. I say that because something definitely went pop there. Okay, let's come back to stillness, placing the feet back on the mat, hip width apart. You have the option here to place the prop back between your thighs if you would like, if you're finding that helpful to help keep your knees and your hips in alignment. You don't need to do it, but just make sure that you do keep the knees, the hips, and the feet in one long line. Bringing the arms down towards your sides. You maybe want to tuck the shoulder blades down behind you. We're going to press the feet into the mat. Start that tilting action again, lifting the pelvis up, and then keep lifting, coming up into a little bridge. And then exhale, rolling the spine back down. Hips are the last thing to meet the ground, and then let the pelvis roll forward. So inhale, pressing up, lifting the pelvis, coming up to a bridge. And exhale, rolling back down. Just take a few more of those. Just exploring at your own pace. You might want to go slower than I am. Really exploring this movement in the pelvis itself. Especially as I'm dropping myself back down, I'm really allowing the pelvis to roll forward and my low back to curve up. Take two more. One more. And then once you've come back to center, just walk the heels away from you until your knees are, I don't know, what is that, about 6 inches off the mat or so, so that you're really balancing on your heels, toes pointing up towards the ceiling. And I'm going to lift up my forearms so the hands are facing in towards one another, so that I can press my forearms, my elbows down into the mat, press my heels into the mat, and lift my hips up off the mat a few inches. They're not going to lift high. You'll feel the whole of the back body engage. Feel all your hamstrings getting involved here. Keep breathing for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and release. Good job. Take a long stretch. Let everything be loose. Maybe roll the ankles a few times. Let's roll over onto our tummies. Just bringing your hands together to make a little cushion for your forehead. I'm going to keep my head up so you can hear me, but you can bring your forehead down onto the mat. Just wiggle the knees out about as wide as the mat. Lift the feet up towards the ceiling and just take those 90-degree drops again, little windscreen wiper actions. You'll feel it's very, very different on your tummy from lying on your back. And coming back to stillness, bring the feet down, but keep the knees quite wide. Just maybe straighten the left leg, and we're going to walk the right knee up so it's parallel with the hip. Foot flex, so the toes are pointing away from you. So we're in this little half frog shape. You can keep your forehead down on the mat, or if you like, you can plant your forearms. Come up into more of a sphinx shape. So a little gentle back bend between the shoulder blades. Really just relaxing through that right hip. You might want to pad the knee with a little blanket if it feels uncomfortable. Just relax the hips as much as possible. And gently walk that knee back in, straighten the leg and go to the other side. So walk that left knee up, foot flexed, toes pointing away from you. Find your option whether you want to be up in sphinx or down with your forehead on your hands. Notice if there's any difference between the left and the right. If you're feeling there's a lot of pinching, just lower the knee a little bit. Find the point where it's comfortable for your low back. And just relax that hip, breathing gently into that stretch. And gently bring that knee back in. Just bring yourself down, forehead onto the hands if you weren't already there, and just rock the hips from side to side, letting the legs be really like jelly, letting them wobble and be really, really loose. And then for our final pose, just bring the knees a bit closer together, hands at the sides, press yourself up. Coming back to sit on your heels. You're going to gently bring your forehead down to the mat, or if that feels quite far, maybe onto a block. Bringing your hands to clasp your heels behind you. So as you bring your forehead down, this is like a little seed child's pose, but holding on to your feet. And then we're going to gently lift the hips, rocking onto the top of our head. Not too much weight on the head, just so that you can feel that nice tugging through the spine. The arms are giving a wee bit of traction, curving the base of your spine up towards the ceiling, taking a few deep breaths here. This is rabbit pose. It's actually one of my absolute favorites. I really, really encourage you to incorporate it into your yoga practices. If you're doing any kind of back bends, anything, from sphinx, all the way up to camel pose, absolutely follow up with a little rabbit pose or something like this for a counter pose. Gently bring the hips back down to the heels, roll up slowly. Hands resting in your lap for a moment, and let's just pause. Letting the practice go. I hope that those little mobility movements and few little yoga poses maybe just eased up that area for you. Now, with any kind of stiffness, it's best to do these kind of mobility work and stretches fairly regularly. So just doing it once might not make a huge difference, but hopefully over time it will start to bring you a little bit of relief. Please let me know how you found this practice in the comments. Thank you so much for practicing with me today.